Dave Shackleton joins us from South Africa, actually now in India, where he's doing a demonstration project, and he will be talking through the opportunity to restore our lakes with a holistic process that leverages Mother Nature, saves chemicals, and saves labor efforts. Dave, your very important lake restoration projects, and I'm putting your bio in the field here. Very exciting to think of restoring all of our polluted lakes, and that's what Dave's technology solution is doing, and you'll hear how here in a moment.
The 3-minute version. So typically, the problem really hits when we're unable to produce potable water. We don't have access to potable water, and that's typically described as a water shortage. And that's how many people kind of describe and conceptualize the global water crisis. But in reality, water operates in a circle, a cycle. And when we're making potable drinking water, we are pulling water from nature, be it in a river, lake, dam, reservoir, borehole, into our built infrastructure, where we basically try and get rid of all biology and make the water as close to sterile as it can be. And that's our water in the pipes. And that's probably 0.1% of water for 0.1% of the time. Once we've used it, it goes to wastewater treatment plants. And what we really do there, it's still part of the built infrastructure, but the difference is we're trying to re-engage biology. So we're trying to use biological processes to remove the nutrients and the contaminants in the water, but only at the microbiological level. And that means there's only a certain amount we can do. We then discharge that water into our natural infrastructure. And for millions and millions of years, that has done the heavy lifting in terms of being able to clear the water of nutrients. And that's our natural water infrastructure, where 99% of the water spends 99% of its time. And that's all dependent on biology. Basically, the food web, the nutrients are moved into the food web processes them, and the higher level organisms in the food web are ultimately cleared from the water by predators, and then we've got nutrient clearance and the water is safe and able to be renewed again. And as long as we keep that balance and we keep that cycle operating, everything's good. But typically what goes wrong is, because of population growth, because of urbanization and the increased use of water per head, we have more and more residual nutrients from our infrastructure, our built infrastructure, going into our natural infrastructure, which causes eutrophication. That destroys the food web. It facilitates the onset of toxic cyanobacteria, and it converts what was a natural infrastructure asset into a liability. And then when the water is unusable, we say there's a water shortage. And this happens all over the US every year. And you get ridiculous statements like there's a water shortage in Toledo, which sits on Lake Erie, and there's no shortage of water in Lake Erie whatsoever. So what we do is, we're a biotechnology company, and we focus on the biological aspects of our wastewater treatment infrastructure and natural infrastructure. Just quickly to explain what happens in eutrophication. You have your residual nutrients coming into your rivers, lakes, and dams. You have a normal amount of aquatic vegetation. You have algae, which is consumed by zooplankton, which is consumed by fish. And the fish eventually are, some of them, a lot of them, removed from the water by fishermen, by birds of prey, by animals of prey. And so we keep a balance in the nutrients. So how does it go wrong? Well, in essence, what happens is we have nutrient surges and nutrient inflows that cause excess weeds and algae. That dies and goes to the bottom and decomposes, and you start to build a nutrient stockpile in the sediment as all that vegetative biomass dies off. When that decomposes, it takes all the water out, oxygen out of the water column, And that means the food web can't exist in deoxygenated water. So the food web, which is responsible for clearing the nutrients and renewing the water, is constrained. And what we have is a perpetual recycling of nutrients to produce biomass in the form of algae, cyanobacteria, and weeds. And we end up with this sort of situation. So what we do, and these are just some sort of before and after and illustrations. This is a lake beforehand where you can see it's been completely taken over by weeds because it's completely filled with organic sediment. And we can take a cross section through that and look at the depth profile of the lake before we got involved to remediate it. Unfortunately, they applied herbicide, and you can see how the volume of water in the lake was reduced by 5,500 cubic meters. That's the amount of additional sediment that was created by the herbicide killing the weeds off. And that's exactly why we shouldn't be using things like herbicides and algicides. But you can see over a period of 2 years, we have cleared 10,000 cubic meters of sediment from that water body. And that's what it looks like afterwards. Similarly, this is a before and after situation. Another one where it is red, you have intensive weed growth. You can see how the weed growth has been thinned out because we've removed the sediment that it roots in. When we began treatment on this water body, this radar device was right up against the edge of the lily pads that it invaded. And you can see what has happened in terms of that invasive weed afterwards. And these are aerial photos showing a house that the beach was completely blocked off. It's now open up again. This is a drinking water reservoir where we've got rid of the toxic cyanobacteria. This shows you the change in the bottom of the water, the bottom of the lake. And you can see the sludge and slime, which inhibits fish spawning and fish growth, has been got rid of. And this is one of the reasons why we get big improvements in fish life. Just to give you an idea of the way we're able to scale, this is a drinking water reservoir in Puerto Rico. It's 850 odd acres. It's 170 feet deep. And we've restored not only the fish life, but the bird life, and the fishermen are back. And on top of that, they produce drinking water from this reservoir. Because of the improvement in water quality, we've halved the amount of chemical treatments required to produce potable water. And most importantly in that, we've halved the amount of chlorine. And that chlorine causes disinfection byproducts, the main one of which is trihalomethanes. And you can see in this reservoir, we have for the first time in 12 years got them compliant on trihalomethanes. The reservoir next door and the plant next door is not. And then lastly, this is an aquaculture operation where you have two identical ponds, one next to the other. This one has our technology in it. We are managing the water quality. The fish are healthy. Their productivity is better. The mortality rate is much lower. And the camera will now pan over to an identical pond next door, which has what has always been considered the leading world's best technology for managing water quality in these sort of environments. And you can see the difference. So that's us. I hope I didn't go too much over the 3 minutes.